Until recently, the idea that electric vehicles would make up a significant portion of all cars on our streets was something for the future. Then China came along and thrust the future upon us now. It's achieved this with breakneck growth in the industry, fueled by government subsidies.
20 years ago, the country that once followed other brands to build cars is now leading in the car manufacturing world. They won the race when top countries like Japan and the US were the world's best car makers. We're talking about China, and nearly half of the world is now using Chinese cars. But how did a country that was once following others beat the big names in the industry? To crack the code, let's go back to the early 2000s. In the early 2000s, the car industry was changing a lot. Most cars used gas, and countries like the US, Germany, and Japan were the big players. At the time, China was just starting to make cars, and they were the regular gas-powered cars. But despite their best efforts, Chinese automakers struggled to compete with the well-established international brands that had already captured the market. Even though Chinese car makers were behind, they saw a chance. Instead of trying to copy the big companies, they did something totally new that changed everything. They stopped focusing on regular cars and started making electric cars instead. Yes, the electric cars we see everywhere today are because of that big change. And it wasn't just a guess. It was a smart move that helped China become a leader in electric cars. Sure, it was a risky move. Because at that time, electric cars were just side experiments by companies like General Motors and Toyota, projects that often got banned. But China saw a great chance to become a big player in the car industry, and one reason was they try their best to beat countries like Japan in traditional cars. But they didn't see any chance to win the race. Even one expert, Hui, said that Japan was doing so well that they didn't think they needed to start making electric cars. But for China, this was a chance to stand out. So, they went all in, investing tons of money and resources into making electric cars and building the charging stations and other things needed to support them. And luckily, in a lot of ways, their risk paid off big time. China quickly realized that electric cars can make the air cleaner, use less oil from other countries, and help the economy grow. Chinese companies were excited, thinking, this is a huge opportunity, and the proof we can see on the roads. But making electric cars wasn't simple. It needed new tech, reliable suppliers, and modern factories. And surprisingly, China already had a lot. The real turning point was in 2001. China's 5-year plan, which is basically their big plan for the economy, made electric cars a top priority. This showed everyone that China is serious about electric cars. In 2007, China's electric car journey officially started because they got a strong supporter, Wan Gang, a car engineer. Wan had lots of experience making electronics at Audi in Germany, and he became China's Minister of Science and Technology. Wan loved electric cars and knew how to get people excited about them. In 2008, he even tried out Tesla's first car, the Roadster. Many people think Wan is the main reason China decided to focus so much on electric cars. He even used his connection to the upper class to his advantage, like politicians, the media, and even royalty. From then on, developing electric cars became a major part of China's economic plans. But in 2009, the Chinese government started supporting them. It was a green light for the electric car industry to grow. The government started giving money to companies to help them make more electric buses, taxis, and even regular cars for people to buy. In the beginning, only a few hundred electric cars were sold in China. But with more money coming in, companies make their cars better and more affordable. This means that regular people can finally afford to buy an electric car. And because of this, China became the biggest car market in the world, selling way more cars than the US. Over the next 10 years, the government spent over $29 billion to help the electric car industry. And in 2022, it worked. China sold over 10 million electric cars that year, which was more than half of all the electric cars sold in the whole world. Before regular people started buying electric cars, China used them in its huge public transportation system. Buses, taxis, and more. China's roads became a place to test these new cars. The government also made it easier for people to buy electric cars. In cities like Beijing, where it's hard to get a car license plate, people who bought electric cars got special treatment. Everything was going perfect, and Tesla entered into the industry. In the start, China welcomed Tesla, but soon Tesla faced tough competition from Chinese electric car brands. And in October 2023, the European Union started investigating if Chinese electric car makers were getting unfair help from their government. This investigation caused problems for China's plans to sell their cars worldwide. But China was already on the hype, so such investigations were just pieces of cakes. By 2024, things had changed. China is doing great with electric cars, but US car makers are having trouble. Like, Ford is making fewer electric F-150 Lightnings because they're not selling well. And the main reason is price. Compared to regular trucks, the electric version was just too expensive for many people. This is a big problem in the US. The average electric car still costs about $55,000, which is way too much for a lot of people. Ford is also trying hard to fix this, but it's a tough challenge. Even last year, Ford thought about building a new battery factory in Virginia or Michigan to make their electric cars cheaper. They wanted to make batteries that were less expensive and worked better. But the technology for the factory was linked to KTL, a big Chinese battery company. Because the US and China don't always get along, this connection became a political issue. So Ford paused their plans. Even though the US is spending a lot of money to build its own battery industry, China is still the leader. They control most of the world's supply of important battery materials like lithium, nickel, and cobalt. China also produces about 70% of the world's rare earth materials, which are crucial for EV batteries. This gives them a huge advantage in the global battery market. In 2023, China sold more cars than Japan, becoming the world's biggest car exporter. And in just 2 years, China's share of the European electric car market grew by over 200%. The UK is also seeing a lot of Chinese electric cars, with almost a third of all new electric cars sold there in the first half of 2023 being from Chinese brands. Even in places like Sweden, you see way more of these cars on the road now. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. China, which used to follow other countries in the car industry, is now leading the way, especially with electric cars. By 2030, China is expected to control 30% of the global electric car market. But the question is, should established car brands be worried? The answer is yes, because China's recent push into the European market shows that it's getting harder for European car manufacturers to compete. The challenge isn't just about selling more cars, it's also about keeping up with new trends and what customers want. Plus, it's hard for brands to sell more cars in Europe, because Europe is trying to go green and use more electric cars, but electric cars are expensive right now. The high cost is making it hard for people to switch, so this situation in Europe is opening the door for new car companies to offer electric cars at a better price. Established brands should be a little worried but not freak out. They need to change with the market if they want to beat China. And Tesla is already ready for it. Tesla is starting to build factories to make 10 million cars a year, which will probably make them produce more cars than VW and Toyota. Elon Musk recently talked about how Chinese electric car makers are becoming a bigger challenge for Tesla. He thinks there should be stricter rules for them to sell their cars here. He even said they could beat other car manufacturers if we don't make it harder for them. Musk wants the government to consider making it harder for Chinese companies to sell their cars. He even pointed out that BYD, a Chinese company, started making electric cars later than Tesla, but they've caught up fast. The speed and success of these Chinese companies have definitely gotten the attention of big car makers, and companies like GM and Ford are making sure they don't lose the good quality their customers expect. GM's CEO, Ed Whittaker, has said that Buick, Chevy, and Cadillac need to keep their standards high. Ford is also being careful about how they grow and who they work with to maintain their quality. Meanwhile, the Chinese government is helping its best companies go global, so these companies are working hard to improve and compete worldwide. The future of the car industry is up in the air, and the race to come out on top is still wide open. To succeed, companies will need to adapt, stay innovative, and have a clear plan for the future. And to be honest, China's sudden rise in the car industry just proves that no one's spot at the top is guaranteed anymore. All you need is a good strategy and confidence. So, what do you think? Can the well-known car brands keep up, or is this China's time to take over? Share your thoughts in the comments. And thanks for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, give it a thumbs up, share, and hit that subscribe button. See you in the next video.